I cannot tell you how much joy it brings me to be standing here this morning because I get to be here with my whole amazing team, which is really exciting because these students have been on a pretty incredible journey so far. So many of you will remember that over around the past 10-ish months, this team has been fundraising, they've been praying, they've been spending many hours trying to learn Spanish on Duolingo, and they've been preparing their hearts to step into what Jesus was inviting them to do in Mexico City. And right from the beginning, this was not something this team did alone. This is something that you as the church came alongside us in really powerful ways. You were praying, you were giving generously, you were encouraged them, and you cheered them on when the task seemed too big. So there's a few times where the task seemed a bit too big. But honestly, church, you guys went above and beyond to support these young people in their desire to make Jesus known. So on behalf of the team, I just want to pause and say a huge thank you. Thank you for sending this team, because you didn't just send them on a trip. You became a vital part of the story that God was writing through their lives. So thank you, church. Now this morning, as Pastor Josh had mentioned, is going to look a little bit different than normal. Instead of hearing a normal sermon, you're going to hear the message lived out through the voices of these students here. Each one of them encountered Jesus in real and tangible ways while we were in Mexico City. And today they're going to share those stories with you. My prayer is that as you listen, you won't just hear about their experiences, but you'll catch a glimpse of the way that God is moving in the world, and even right here in our church family, especially in our youth. So for a bit of context first, I just want to give you a bit of a snapshot of what our days look like. We spent 11 full days in Mexico. Our hosts were 2 Alliance missionaries, Ray and Cindy, and they welcomed us with open arms. They organized so many of the opportunities we had while we were in Mexico City. And during that time, they introduced us to a woman named Rosalia. Rosalia is a beautiful woman with a heart for Jesus and for her community. So with Rosalia, Ray and Cindy, Rosalia's family, the pastors of the church that we were working in, we ran a week-long kids camp in her neighborhood. And let me tell you, this youth team jumped into this. They came in with energy and courage. They shared their testimonies. They led games. They taught Bible lessons. And most importantly, they spent intentional time building relationships with the kids that we were working with. We also partnered with the local pastor and his family, and we were joining in the work that they were already faithfully doing with children and youth. And what we witnessed was really, really powerful. We got to see God at work not only in the kids and families we were serving, but also in the hearts of our own students here. As they stepped out in faith, they pushed past their comfort zones in many ways, and they experienced God's presence in fresh ways. So that's what today is about. This is more than just a trip report. It's a chance for you to hear firsthand how God is transforming lives. These students aren't just coming home with souvenirs or stories. They're carrying home experiences of Jesus that will stay with them for the rest of their lives. And this morning, we want to invite you into that. So with that in mind, I would love for you guys to hear directly from them. We have almost our whole missions team here, and each one of them has a beautiful story worth telling. So I want to introduce you to our team. So first, we do actually have Meg and Lyle who are over there. They're not sharing stories today, but they have many good short stories to share if you want to ask them. And then we have my team here. We have my friend Kylan, who is one of my co-leaders. And then we have the rest of the student team, Isaiah, Jack, Nolan, Lauren, Catherine, Chloe, and Lucy. So with that being said, I want to ask you guys some questions. So first up, my friend Lucy, I want to know, why did you want to go on this missions trip to Mexico?
Okay, so I initially heard about the Mexico missions trip 2 years ago as our church sent out the first team. And I remember that I knew a lot of people who went on the trip because I was in youth group. And I just remembered being in such awe of all of these incredible experiences and all the stories that they were telling. What I specifically remember is the recap video. I remember watching it and just being, oh, I want to experience that one day. And I'm lucky that I did. As they got back, I just felt like, oh, this is such a cool thing. I want to do it. So naturally, as I grew into who I am today, and I grew in my faith, I started to feel a call towards the next missions trip in St. Albert Alliance. Wherever that would be, whatever we were doing, I just felt like I had to do it. So when the announcement came out that they were taking applications for the Mexico missions trip of 2025, I felt a deep call in my heart to apply. I was so scared to apply, as this felt like something so new and scary. There were countless what ifs, and many times I felt like I didn't think I should apply. I remember attending first period with this teacher who had a heart for me. We would always talk about random things in my life, and she was always there for encouragement and advice. I remember I was talking to her about how scared I was and how I was debating applying for Mexico. That day, I wore a hoodie that said faith over fear. I had no idea that this hoodie would change the entire trajectory of my summer. And that was kind of like the thing that set it off. I remember that she came up to me. I was sitting doing my artwork in her class. She came up to me and said, "Hun, what does your shirt say?" I had to explain to her it was a slogan that I like to live by, faith over fear, stepping out of my comfort zone into what God wants for me. She then told me that I let my anxiety and my fears keep me from doing things in faith, and that she believes that I should attend this mission trip. She's not even a Christian, which is really cool, because she didn't even know what I was doing. She just knew that I had to do it. This, I felt, was God appearing to me through a person, pushing me to apply, to do something out of my comfort zone. As I applied, I felt that even if I wasn't accepted, that God would lead me where I was meant to be, and I'm really, really happy that this is where I ended up.
That's so good. Thank you, Lucy. And my friend Jack, why did you want to go on this missions trip?
I wanted to go on this missions trip to experience new culture, people, different ways of life, and to share God with those who might not know as much about him.
That's awesome. And Nolan, why did you want to go on this missions trip?
I wanted to go on this missions trip for many reasons, but the main reasons were to step out of my comfort zone and do something I love doing, which is sharing Jesus to other people, as well as to try to find my identity as a person. Before this trip, I had zero clue what my life was going to look like, what I was going to do after high school. And I had people telling me that I had to know as soon as I could because it was a big deal. But I quickly found out that while I was there, I was getting called to global missions. On the second day of the trip, I felt like a real push from Jesus to go and do global missions. So now I know what I'm going to do with my life, and I have it mapped out until I'm 25.
That's awesome. And now, my friend Kylan, you were able to join this trip as a leader. Why did you decide to do that?
I wanted to go on the trip just because I've never been on one, and I think it'd be a really good experience, which it was. Also, I'm going to school to be a youth pastor, so I feel like going on this trip, it'd be a good outline of what my job would look like in the future, and I loved it, so yeah.
That's so good. Now we're going to shift gears a little bit. This team spent a lot of time prepping for this trip. So my friend Katie, I have a question for you. Throughout all of this preparation and even on the trip itself, how did you see Jesus move through it?
Jesus, he was everywhere on this trip. In the preparation, his compassion and his generosity poured out onto all of us. And I saw my own heart softening to the harshness that I felt I was experiencing. When we got to Mexico, Jesus molded and equipped us to be his hands and his feet. In the first couple of days, we learned what to do and what not to do. We learned how to greet everyone we encountered, even though it was very awkward. We learned how to speak some Spanish, though some of us didn't retain much of it, primarily me. We learned how to communicate without speaking, and most importantly, we learned how to lean into the Holy Spirit, to notice where Jesus was showing up, and to identify ways we could demonstrate him in everything we did. Jesus worked a great deal, but mainly in our hearts, pulling us far out of our comfort zones. A year ago, I would never be up here talking on stage or singing My Lighthouse in front of a bunch of adults and making a fool of myself. I would have never gone 5,000 kilometers away from everything that I felt was comfortable without my older sister, and I definitely would have never talked honestly about my feelings and meant it in a nightly debrief. Jesus was up to so much good. There was unbelievable growth in each person who went on this trip, and also in the people we were there to serve. The hearts of the hearts of the Mexicans went from uncertainty about us to a level of comfort. If you had walked in from the street, you would have thought we had been in Mexico for months, when in reality, it was just 5 days.
That's so good. And Isaiah, can you share how you saw Jesus move on this trip?
Yeah, so I really saw Jesus just through my fellow peers, the way they interacted with all the events we held and fundraisers and just the determination they had. And that didn't change when we got to Mexico. They were just fully like invested in hanging out with these kids, playing the games, saying their testimonies. It just really showed Jesus through their actions and their determination.
That's awesome. And Chloe, can you share how you saw Jesus move on this trip?
I saw Jesus move in me a lot, especially during the preparation for this trip. Honestly, the whole time we were getting ready, I didn't even know if I was going to be able to go. I only found out about 2 weeks before we left that I could actually go. So the whole time, I just had to trust God. I had to believe that He was going to make the right decision for me, whether that meant winning provincials and moving on to Westerns with my softball team or coming to Mexico. It wasn't easy because I really wanted both. I wanted a medal at provincials, and I also wanted to go to Mexico and serve. I finally just put it in His hands and trusted Him. And the cool part is, He worked it out. We got third at provincials, so I got a medal, but we didn't move on to Westerns. That meant my season was done, and I was free to go on the trip. At first, it was really hard because I wanted to keep playing the sport I loved, and it was tough knowing we lost. But even in that, I had peace. I knew that He wanted me there instead. And once I was in Mexico, it all started to make sense. Even though the other teams were playing at Westerns, I was there serving the people of Mexico and trying to show them the love of Jesus. And I realized this is where I was supposed to be. Jesus showed me that He knew what was best all along, so I saw Him move first in teaching me to trust Him with my future and showing me in Mexico that His plan was better than mine.
Amazing. Thank you, Chloe. And now to wrap up this question, my friend Lucy, would you be able to share how you saw Jesus move?
Yes, I can. Throughout the preparation, as well as the trip, Jesus was incredibly present with me, the other team members, and the kids and people that we met in Mexico, and our church family. As we were preparing for the trip, we had to brainstorm all kinds of ideas to raise money. The team chose our favorites, and we were on to the planning period. We didn't really know how much money we would make or what we would do if we happened to not have enough. But we had faith, and we trusted that Jesus would provide for us. We were blessed in so many ways in the fundraisers with support from you guys in financial as well as spiritual and mental ways. We were shown so much love by our church family and those surrounding us. There was a very specific event that really showed me how much support we had. This was the bake sale. We were surrounded by so many families, grandparents, sisters, and brothers just showering us in these incredible baking treats. We had no idea how we would make all this money because we needed donations to make any money at all. But we were already overjoyed with all this love we were shown just by the baking being donated. Even as we entered Mexico City, we were shown so much love and so much compassion by every single person who we worked with. I saw Jesus move in incredible ways throughout the people in our community and the community of Mexico City. I watched as God brought us all together with the common factor of love for Jesus and love for those around us. We could have been shown light hospitality from the people in Mexico as well as the people here, but we were shown hospitality that didn't feel like a community, but it felt like a family.
That's so good. Now, one of the things that our team talked about a lot when we got home from the trip is that we're going to have a lot of opportunity to share some stories from the trip. So Lauren, would you be able to share a story that stood out to you from this trip?
So I bonded with an 11-year-old boy named Sahid. On the very first day, he asked me to be friends with him on the walk back to Rosalia's. And the next day, he hugged me when he saw me and lit up every time. We were basically inseparable from that point. He had me sign the bandana 11 times on the Friday. Every time he asked, I was like, okay. He was like, one more. He made me realize that bonds can be made without good communication. The connections aren't just formed on words spoken, but actions taken. Actions can be actively learning their language or just listening to them talk even though you don't know what they're saying. It's making ways to communicate outside of language like Jesus did.
That's so good. Saeed really did light up every time he saw Lauren. That is true. Chloe, can you share a story as well?
It was the third day with the kids, and me and Lucy were just talking when two little girls walked up.
They started doing this handshake game out of nowhere. The thing was, they had already taught Lucy it, so she knew what was going on, but I was lost. On this game, you would need really good hand-eye coordination, which I do not have. So every single time, I was the one messing it up. Every time I messed up, the girls would just laugh, not in a mean way, but in a fun way. And then they would do it with each other, super slow, trying to show me, then would try it with me again. And of course, I would mess it up, but they never stopped. Like every day till Friday, which was our last day, they made me try over and over and over again. And finally, on the last day, I made it through the whole game without messing up. The girls had the biggest smiles, like huge. They were so happy that I finally got it.
It's so fun. Jack, what's your story that you want to share?
So the first day we were there, I met this little boy named Ernesto, and we made a stick figure and a cat out of beans and grains. God helped me to connect with him, even though I wasn't confident in speaking Spanish to him.
Awesome. And the last story for this is my friend Katie. Would you be able to share your story?
I'd love to. One second. Over the 10 days in Mexico, God was very present. He never left our side, and he was there in the debriefs, the long nights, the food, and most of all, the people. I got the opportunity to work alongside God in the ministry he was doing in the small church in Mexico. God showed up in real, tangible ways and showed me where my purpose is. From the first day, I could feel the desperation for Christ. After a long and bumpy car ride, the second we stepped foot on the ground, I could feel a hunger for more in that neighborhood. You could see it. Specifically, the need to be loved and to be seen. One boy named Aaron was the perfect opportunity to love someone like Jesus would. From the very first morning, God drew me to him. I heard God saying to me, "Love him like I do." So I responded and said, "Yes, Lord, equip me." Every morning that week, Aaron would run up to me and say hello and give me a high five or a fist bump. That was all the English he knew. But throughout the week, I taught him a bit more. But God didn't let the language barrier stop our bond from growing. We played a lot of games together, like arm wrestling and thumb wars, and eventually some kind of version of tag. And he always beat me. And he would grin ear to ear. He was so filled with the Holy Spirit's joy. Getting to play with him, hang out with him, and show God's love to him was one of the biggest blessings God gave to me on this trip. We also bonded over our love for Spider-Man. It became one of our things throughout the week. And on the last day, Aaron kept trying me to get to come to his house. He'd walk up to me and he said, "Mi casa," 6 or 7 times. Over and over again, tugging at my hand and pulling me to the stairs. I so badly wanted to say yes, but we weren't allowed to go to any of the kids' homes. It broke my heart to say no. During the goodbyes, he suddenly left, and I thought that was it. I would never see him again. But then he came back, and he brought Cindy over with him to translate and walked straight up to me. He handed me a Spider-Man Lego figurine, and he gave it to me. It was such a small object, but it meant absolutely everything to me. That gift, that moment, was God confirming that he had used me. I didn't just show up. I had loved like Jesus would, and God was there the whole time equipping me.
I love that. That's so good. Now, for my final question here, you guys have all been on a pretty incredible journey, and you guys saw Jesus move in some really beautiful ways. So I'd love to hear from some of you guys about an encouragement that you would have for our church family here. So Kylan, would you be able to share what your encouragement is for our church?
Yeah, I would encourage the church that if Jesus is calling you somewhere or to do something, do it. Take that step of faith and walk on the water, and don't be afraid of the things around you. Just trust him. And trust in Jesus, trust that he has amazing things for you, and know that he loves you so much.
So good. My friend Chloe, would you be able to share your encouragement?
Before this trip, I didn't know if I was going to be able to come. I played softball, and Westerns were happening around the same time. I really wanted to win provincials and move on to Westerns, but I also really wanted to go on this trip. And honestly, I had no idea how it was all going to work out. So I just had to give it to God. I told him, "Okay, God, you know what I want, but you also know what's best for me. I'm trusting you with the result." And he provided. He worked it out. We won a medal in provincials, but didn't end up going to Westerns, and I was able to go to Mexico. That really showed me that God knows our hearts and our desires, but he also knows the bigger picture. Even when we don't understand what he's doing, we can trust that his plan is good. I just want to encourage you, whatever you're going through, even if it feels uncertain or confusing, give it to God. Trust him with it. He's got a plan, and it's always better than anything we could come up with ourselves.
Awesome. And Nolan, would you be able to share your encouragement as well?
This missions trip grew my faith substantially, and I just want to extend a thank you to everybody here who supported us, donated, and gave prayer for the team. Your support was really what got us to and from Mexico. I encourage you to keep on going. Missions trips are one of the most impactful things that has happened in my life and in a lot of youth and adults' lives. The people going on the missions, as well as the people they are going to support, will be impacted. Keep on supporting teams to go and be the church in the least reached people groups and help water the seeds planted in people's lives. Thank you for the encouragement and support.
Amazing. And my friend Lauren, would you be able to share your encouragement?
Thank you for supporting the church in the ways that you have. It changed my life and many others. Please continue to do this so that others may experience what I did and gain a new perspective on the world and Jesus and how he works through his people.
Amazing. And now, last but not least, Catherine, could you share your encouragement with the church?
I'd love to. To be completely honest, I'm very bad at feeling feelings. I tend to push them down and bury them deep where nobody can see them. I've gotten so good at pretending that they don't exist, it's almost like I've convinced myself that they don't. But unfortunately, when you're in another country, far from everything familiar, surrounded by people who know you better than you know yourself, that plan does not work. I remember the first few days in Mexico, the car rides were long, the weather was questionable, and my stomach was not agreeing with anything. But the real struggle wasn't the heat or the stomach problems, it was the feeling that I had nowhere to hide. I couldn't just keep pushing down everything I'd been avoiding for months. I could not escape. All it took was a look from Abby every single night before bed, and suddenly I was losing it. Every day, it felt like I was feeling new things I'd buried so deep. I didn't even know they were still there. It was so uncomfortable, especially for a person who really hates crying in front of other people. But God had put me in this place for a reason, and he was forcing me to confront everything I'd been hiding. The walls I had carefully built around my heart came crumbling down, piece by piece. I felt so exposed, so vulnerable, and completely undone, but it was exactly what I needed. I was so desperate for a change, desperate to stop running, desperate to deal with the pain and the fears I had been pushing down for so long. God was meeting me there, in the mess, in the struggle. He was teaching me that I didn't have to hide anymore, that he could handle the parts of me I was so ashamed of. And in that process, he was gently showing me how to surrender them to him little by little. In the midst of this, God began to whisper to my heart, "The Lord is my portion, therefore I will wait for him," which is Lamentations 3:24. And in that moment, I knew the waiting wasn't just about sitting still. It was about trusting that God would meet me right where I was. He'd already provided everything I needed. He was my portion. So in those desperate moments when it feels like there's no more light, that's when God shows up. Not with quick fixes or easy answers, but with himself. He's not afraid of the mess you bring. He wants to walk through it with you. He's the only one who can fill the emptiness that nothing else can. And that's what he did for me in Mexico. He filled me, he met me in my pain, and he slowly began to heal what I didn't even know healing. So, if you're in a season of desperation, I want to encourage you not to run from it. Don't hide from it. Bring it to Jesus. You don't have to pretend like everything's fine or that you have it all together. And he's not intimidated by your brokenness. He's the only one who can truly fill that void, and he's more than enough. Don't settle for anything less than the fullness of his presence. Let him fill you, let him transform you, and let him lead you into the hope that never ever fades. You won't regret it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, team. You guys are good to head on down. Isn't it so good to hear from the team themselves how they saw Jesus moving in their lives? Now, to wrap up our time before the worship team comebacks on, I want to share a bit of an encouragement from Scripture from what I got to witness as someone who's able to journey with each one of these students while they were on this trip. So you may know, or maybe you've just come back from a full summer of camping, but we just wrapped up our summer in the Psalm series. And so as I was prepping for today, I had a blank slate of where I could pull some encouragement from. And I felt like Jesus was really telling me that we're going to pop back into the Psalms. So we're going to pop back in today, and so we're going to be in Psalm 78. Now, Psalm 78 is actually a really long psalm, so we're not going to go through all of it, but we will look through the first 7 verses. So I'll read verse 1 through 4 for you here first. It says, "My people hear my teaching. Listen to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth with a parable. I will utter hidden things, things from of old. Things we have heard and known, things our ancestors have told us. We will not hide them from their descendants. We will tell the next generation the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord, his power, and the wonders he has done. The psalmist is here saying that every generation of believers has a responsibility. We are called to tell the story of God's power, his faithfulness, and his mighty works, so that this next generation might know him, might trust him, and will carry that story forward. Now, you might be wondering, why is this even such a big deal? Because the thing is, if we don't pass our faith on to the next generation, if we're not intentionally investing in the next generation, the story of God's goodness just kind of fades into the background. We've all seen it. Faith can be lost in one generation if we're not taking the responsibility seriously of passing it on. And that's why this Mexico missions trip was so huge. It wasn't just about sending students to another country. It was about shaping the faith of our young people here in this church. It was about giving them experiences where they encounter Jesus for themselves. And it's helping them step into the story of God in ways that will mark them for life. So Psalm 78 is beginning with this command. It says, "Hear my teaching, listen to the words of my mouth." Why? Because we're forgetful people. If we don't stop and recall God's goodness, it's easy to get caught up in the noise of life and lose sight of who he is. Think about Israel's history. Again and again, when they forgot what God had done, when they forgot the Exodus, they forgot the Red Sea, the manna in the wilderness, they drifted into this sin and idolatry. Forgetting leads to unfaithfulness, whereas remembering leads us to faith. That's why the psalmist says, we will not hide these things from the next generation. We will tell them the stories. We will remind them of God's mighty deeds. And church, this is where you played such a key role. For the past 10 months, as our students prepared for Mexico, you came alongside them. You were praying for them. You were supporting them financially. You were encouraging them. And in doing so, you reminded them of God's faithfulness. They didn't just read about God providing. They saw it happen through our church family. Every dollar raised, every prayer answered, every encouragement was another reminder that God is real and he provides through his people. Then we carry on in verse 5 and 6. And it says, he decreed statutes for Jacob and established the law in Israel, which he commanded our ancestors to teach their children. So the next generation would know them, even the children yet to be born, and they in turn would tell their children. So it tells us that God gave us his law, his word, so that the parents and leaders would teach it to their children. Why? So that the next generation would know them, even the children yet to be born. Passing on faith is not accidental. It takes intention, it takes telling stories, it takes living them out. It takes giving the next generation opportunities to step into the mission of God themselves. And that's exactly what I got to see happen in Mexico. Our students didn't just hear about faith, they lived it. They didn't just sit in a classroom talking about what it means to be a disciple. They were disciples in action. They stood up in front of kids in Mexico and sharing their testimonies, often for the first time. They helped lead a camp in a neighborhood where many children have never experienced anything like that. They prayed with people, they sang songs in Spanish, they laughed and they played and they built relationships across cultures. And in those moments, it's not just learning about faith, they were passing it on. They were doing what Psalm 78 is commanding us to do, declaring the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord to the next generation, to kids in another nation who needed to hear about Jesus. And just a quick pause, I want to tell you, when you are standing there in the back of a classroom, watching a 16-year-old who 10 months ago had told you they can't speak in front of anyone, that's too much, and then you see them sharing a story about how Jesus met them in their troubles back home, it feels like Psalm 78 is just coming alive right in front of you. It's just really cool to see. And so if we pop then to verse 7, it says, then they would put their trust in God. They would not forget his deeds, but would keep his command. Verse 7 is giving us this ultimate goal. It's saying that they would put their trust in God. That's the heart of all of this. We're not pouring into this next generation so they can just have good morals or that they can grow up to be really nice church kids. We're pouring into them so that they will trust in God personally, so that their faith won't just be borrowed from their parents or their leaders, but it will be their own. And again, that's what I got to see happen in Mexico. These students who were so nervous discovered that God was giving them courage. These students who weren't sure if their stories would even matter found out that God used their words to impact others. Students who wondered if God could work through them saw him do exactly that. And because of that, their trust grew deeper, not because of a lecture, but because they got to live this experience. And so, church, this is why we invest in the next generation. Our young people need to see it, to do it, to live it. And when they do, their trust in God becomes unshakable. So what does that mean for us? I have 3 things that I think we're called to, church. 1, keep telling the stories. Don't underestimate the power of sharing your testimony with a young person. Talk about how God has been faithful in your life. Talk about your struggles. Share that with them because they need to hear it. The second is keep making space for the next generation. Let them lead, let them serve, let them try and let them fail. Because it's in those moments that they discover God's presence for themselves. And third, keep investing. Trips like Mexico don't just happen. They take a whole church family committed to giving and praying and encouraging and walking alongside our students. And that's what you did, and the fruit is already showing. So Psalm 78 paints this picture of a relay race. Each generation kind of runs its leg and then passes the baton of faith to the next. And that's what's happening here. You're passing the baton. These students are picking it up, and one day they'll pass it on to those who come after them as well. This Mexico Missions was more than just a trip. It was a training ground. It was this sacred space where the next generation of disciples got to experience God's power in ways that they'll never forget. And because of that, their faith and the faith of those that they were with is stronger than it was just a year ago. So church, let's take Psalm 78 to heart. Let's commit ourselves to remembering God's faithfulness and passing it on intentionally and praying that the next generation would rise up to put their full trust in him.